everyone, welcome to our channel. This is something about myself. You can pause the video and read it. Also, I take online classes at royacademyclass.teachme.in. This is my website, you can check it out. Let's get into the class. This video is a part of the series of understanding computer organization and architecture, and this is the episode 1. In this episode, we will learn early days of computers and also the evaluation of stored program computers and what are stored program computers. Well, many of the early computers were not reprogrammable, like Atkinson Very computer. Now, you may ask yourself that what do I mean by a program? Well, when I say program, I mean a computer program. A computer program is a collection of instructions that can be executed by a computer to perform a specific task. Well, what does it mean? Let's say you want to build a computer which can add two numbers. You want to build a computer which can add two numbers. So what do you need? You need two numbers that you want to add. So this is the first number. This is the second number. So we call this data. Now the operation that you want to perform on these two numbers is add. So if you have studied digital logics and circuit, then you know you need a full ladder circuit to add these two numbers. Well, now you may think how this full ladder works. Well, we will study this full ladder in detail when we study digital logics and circuit. Now for now, just know that if you want to add two numbers, then this operation add, how CPU will perform this operation depends on the architecture of the CPU. Depends on the architecture of the CPU. Based on different architecture, this addition operation can be done in different ways. And in our upcoming videos, we will see what are the different architectures of CPU and how these operations like addition, multiplication, division differs from each architecture to another. Now let us look at this Atkinson Very computer that we have just talked about. We sometimes call this ABC. Well, it was the first automatic electronic digital computer. It looked like this. This picture was taken from Wikipedia. So if you go on Wikipedia and study about this ABC or Atkinson Very computer, you will find a lot of detail. It was a very early computer which was limited by the technology of the day and execution, and that's why it remains somewhat obscure. But this computer is what led to the digital era. Now, this type of computers, they executed a single hardware program. They executed a single hardware program. Now, what do I mean by that? Systems that stored program instructions with plugboards or similar mechanisms are single hardware program based computers. So these are systems which are called single hardwired program based computers. Well, let us look at a computer, then this type of computer. You can see, if you have studied digital logic, then you know how a breadboard look like. Well, this is somewhat like that, but it's a very much complex breadboard. Okay, so this was early computers will look like this. These are called single hardware computer. Why? Because they had all the they had a single hardware. They had a single hardware like this, in which specific operations are built using digital circuits. So it's not like you can do anything, any operations in a computer like this. So this computer specifically was designed for accounting. Its name is IMB 402, and it was an accounting machine control panel. It was a accounting machine control panel, which is also summarized as profit and loss. So this type of machines were built in such a way so that only simple accounting operations like profit and loss can be calculated. So you cannot do all the operations like you can do nowadays in a computer, in a general purpose computer. You can do any sorts of general operations, like from addition to multiplication, from addition to complex operations like image processing and all. So this type of computer, you have to, let's say you want to add two numbers, then you have to plug this in, plug these wires in a specific way. So you have to make a specific configuration for adding. Let's say you want to multiply, then you need to change the configuration by plugging in and out the wires, like we do in digital logic circuit breadboard design. So those of you who knows digital logics and circuits like AND gates, OR gates, you have understood what I've just said. So this type of computers were known as single hardware computer because they only had a single hardware program. They only had a single hardware program, and if you want to change the program, then you have to change the hardware itself. Now, as there were no program instructions, no program storage was necessary. Since you can see in this type of computer, there was no instructions at all. So this is the computer. This is its digital circuits. Digital circuits, and you just give input, it will give you output. It can only do that. So there is no concept of controlling the behavior of this circuit based on the inputs. Understood? Okay. Now, other computers later on, after this type of computers, there were some computers in early days which were programmable but stored their programs on punch cards. They stored their program on the punch tape or punch cards, which was physically fed into the system as needed. So what is this punch card? Let us understand. This is punch tape. These are called punched tapes. This is a punch card. This is a punch card. So these two are different, but punch tape are created from punch cards. So they were both famous at the same time. They were both used at the same time. So it was used, this punch card or punch tapes was used throughout the 19th and for much of the 20th century for programmable looms, teleprinters, communication, and for input to computers of 1950s, 1960s, and later as a storage medium for mini computers and CNC machine tools. Okay, so basically in 19th century and 20th century, they were used for programmable looms. Let me write it down. Programmable looms. What are programmable looms? We will see that in just a bit. Teleprinter communication, teleprinter, communications, and also for other purposes. These are the two main functions or main use cases of punch tapes and punch cards in the early 19th and 20th century. So these type of computers were programmable in the sense that you can have a program written in the form of this punch card. So this punch card is, let's say, is a program P1. This punch card is a program P1, which is, let's say, of adding two numbers. Now you want to write a program for multiplying, then you cannot change the program here. You have to create another punch card P2, and this will, let's say, multiply two numbers. Okay, so the data were filled into the form of holes. So basically, in the simple form, you can understand, and if there is a hole, that means there is no data, and if there is if there is no hole, that means there is a data. That means it is 1 or 2. Okay, so like this, punch cards were also of the same architecture like punch tapes. So they were programs P1 and P2. They were like programs, but you cannot store these programs inside the computer. You have to feed it like an input, like you give the data 2 and 3 in order to add these two data. You have to give the computer so that computer can add. Also, you have to give the program P1 which will add this data 2 and 3 as an input. Okay, so here I have written, let me wrap it up. Punch tapes or profitable paper tapes is a form of data storage that consists of a long strip of paper in which holes were punched. It developed and was subsequently used alongside punch cards, differing in that the tape is continuous. Okay, a tape is a continuous, well, a punch card has a fixed length. Or in a tape, you can make a tape as long as you want. It is continuous, and a punch card, it is a fixed card. Okay, so that's the only difference between these two type of devices first, or you can say these type of techniques to store the program. Well, talking about punch cards, you have to know, if you are studying in computer science, or if you are an enthusiast of computers, then you have to know about Jacquard loom. Okay, Joseph Marie Jacquard developed the mechanical Jacquard loom in France in 1803. This innovative machine used punch cards to control and design the textile made on the loom. These cards were predecessors to the modern day computers, which modern day computer punch cards and computer technology. Okay, so you can see this. This is Jacquard loom. This is Jacquard loom. So here, these are the punch cards. Okay, these are the punch card. So because of the punch cards, this loom could create fancy and complex pattern in the cloth more quickly and with greater accuracy than the technology available before this machine was built. These punch cards carry the instructions that are read by the apparatus. Okay, so these are the apparatus. So well, these are the looms, and there is apparatus. So these apparatus, the program that is fed into the apparatus, and the apparatus read this punch cards, and based on that, it tells the loom what patterns to create. What patterns this loom will create is decided based on the punch cards that are given. If you want to create a specific pattern, then you made the punch cards for that pattern, let's say pattern P1, and you made the program in form of punch cards, and you put those punch cards inside this Jacquard loom, and the apparatus will read that, and based on that, it will create in such a way, the apparatus will work in such a way because these punch cards are nothing but holes. Okay, so that's how this and it will, as it will read the holes, the apparatus will work in different way, and as the apparatus works in different way, this loom will also work in different way, and it will create a specific pattern. So if you want to print another pattern on the clothes, then you change the program and you change this whole set of punch cards and you put another set of punch cards here. Okay, so that's how, and that was a very fascinating technology at 1803 when Joseph Mary Jacquard created this machine with the help of punch cards which were used. And after that, in this textile, these punch cards were so much popular in the 19th and 20th century. Well, how much the whatever you have studied right now till now, this is the computer, and a computer has a CPU and has a memory, right? The CPU is responsible for performing all the arithmetic and logical operations as well as controlling the memory, and this memory is responsible for holding the data. And now what do I mean by this data? Data is nothing but your input and output data. Let's say you want to add two numbers, add a comma b. So this a comma b will be your data for input, and your CPU will read this instruction. Also, you have to give this program P1. If you are in early days, let's say you are in 19th and 20th century, then you have to create a program with punch cards and punch card or punched tapes, and you have to provide this as an input to the CPU, so it will work as an input. And in this memory, this data, input data A and B, will be stored, as well as since you have to add these two data, and the result you have to store in some memory location, or you have to hold this result before you show it to the screen, right? So you have used calculators, all of you. So you give 2, you press the plus button, you give 3, and it shows 5 onto the screen in your calculator. So before it shows the 5 onto the screen, it is a very general concept, that general or an obvious idea, that 5, the computer has to store it into its memory. If it does not store it into the memory, how it will show it to the output screen or to the calculator? So that's why this C is also, see, the result is also stored into memory. So the data, when I talk about data, this data is not just input data, this is also the output data that is stored in the memory, and you give the program as a form of input, which the CPU reads and performs all the operations accordingly. And in the output, in the screen, you see the result C. In C, whatever data may be stored. If you have given A 2 and B 3, then C will be 5, and you will see here, instead of C, you will see 5. Okay, so but in 1936, Conrad Zuse anticipated in 2 patent applications that machine instructions, mind you, machine instructions could be stored in the same storage used for data. Now, what do I mean by machine instructions, and what does this line mean? So machine instructions basically means this add instruction that we have just talked about. This add a comma b is the machine instructions. Similarly, this multiply a comma b. You want to divide, so diff a comma b. So these are the machine instructions. Okay, these are the machine instructions. So these machine instructions could be stored in the same storage used for data. That means I have just told you that this instruction P1 you give as a form of input. But what Conrad Zuse said is that as you store the data, why not also store this P1 program directly into the memory, so that you don't have to explicitly give it to the computer. You just store it into the memory, and the computer will take the program from memory. So this idea was discussed by Conrad Zuse, and after that, this concept came into the picture, the concept of program, which leads to stored programmed computers. So in this concept, I have already discussed, in the memory you store data as well as program, and through this program you control the whole how you can manipulate the input. Okay, so what is the advantage of storing the program? Now you can, since you have, like data, if the program is also stored, you can change the program without creating another program. Earlier, if you have given a punch card, you cannot, if you want to change the program, you have to change the punch card. But now, since it is not in a physical way, it is in form of digital way, like you are storing it into something. And in computer, if you can store something, that means it is in the digital form, because computer is a digital device. So what will happen? Your program will store in form of digital in the digital circuits in form of zeros and ones, because we all know that computer stores zeros and ones, and you can change the program at any time without creating another new program, like we have to do in the case of we had to do in the case of punch cards or punch tapes. Okay, so this is the idea behind stored programmed computers. I think you have understood it. Okay, if you have understood it, then that's very good, because it was just the start of computer organization and architecture, and after that many architecture came. Computer architecture developed over time, and after that what we are today, right now, the state in which we are using all these fancy devices and computers is all because of these famous persons like Cornell Zuse and Addison Berry computers, Addison Berry, who built the computers and thought of this idea. Okay, so let me talk about something in regards to the Cornell Zuse. So Cornell Zuse is a German civil engineer and pioneering computer scientist, inventor, and businessman. If you don't know his name, that means you are very new to computer science, because his greatest achievement was the world's first programmable computer, the functional program controlled Turing complete C3, which became operational in 1941. So he is a very famous computer scientist as well an inventor, and his greatest achievement was the world's first programmable computer, whose name was Turing complete C3. Turing complete C3. Let me write it down. Turing complete Z3. Well, this is something about stored program computer. I have already talked about this. So in the next class, from this stored program computer, the idea of John von Neumann computer architecture, John von Neumann computer architecture, as well as Harvard computer architecture came into the picture. So we will study different types of architecture, including John von Neumann and Harvard architecture, in the next episode. So that's it. You can pause the video and read this if you want.